Good morning. Well, today we talk about instructions given in Numbers chapter 33. So if you have your Bibles, grab it, open it up, Numbers 33, get you a good old cup of coffee and or drink of your choice. And let's sit down and let's discuss this a little bit as we dive into this Sunday school lesson that we have from Explore the Bible. Um, have you ever been involved in building a house or a building? Maybe a porch, maybe even putting together some furniture that came, all to pieces and you had to do it. Well, today is about instructions. So why is it important to follow the plan when doing construction or putting together a project? Why is that important? My grandkids have always loved Legos. And, we started out with the real simple Duplo ones and Legos. And as they got older, they got, with more pieces. One of the things they loved more than anything was when it said like 7 and up and they were 5. And they said, just beat a 7-year-old when they put together those Legos. So it's a lot of fun putting together Legos, but you have to follow the instructions. A lot of times you just look at the picture and say, well, I can do that. And you start trying to put it together and it doesn't come out right. And because you even, like in Legos, you had to count the holes to make sure you covered the correct holes based on the picture in your Lego instruction book. Same way with construction. My dad and I built metal buildings for Sears, and if that foundation was not level and square, both of them had to be the same thing, level and square, then that building that you're going to put on top of there would not fit the holes because it was a metal building and they were pre-drilled and they were, it had to be on a level foundation, concrete foundation, and the building foundation that you started on has to be square. If it's out of line just a little bit, those holes will not line up. So following instructions is very important. And God's trying to teach this to the Israelites. You remember, as we go along, God is constantly encouraging us to be obedient to what he tells us. Following instructions is one of the faith requirements that you truly trust God, that you believe in him. You do what he says. So instructions become very important. Well, what happens when you don't follow instructions? The building doesn't line up. The Lego toy that you're building or flowers or building or car or person or whatever it is doesn't look like the picture. It doesn't fit. It doesn't go together. There are extra pieces left over. And when you're working on a car, you sure don't want that you left out something. So it's very important. And when we don't follow instructions, it gets messed up. And we don't want our lives messed up. We don't want any of that going on. Sinuses are bothering me this morning. Excuse me for that. But, yeah, things mess up if we don't follow the instructions. So let's begin here then with the instructions about the land. Listen to it in Numbers 33 and verses 50 through 53. We're just going to take that real quick. And the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Tell the Israelites, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you must drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you. Destroy all their stone images, cast images, and demolish all their high places. You are to take possession of the land and settle in it, because I have given you the land to possess. There's your instructions about this land you're fixing to enter. It's very important that you listen to what God says. Now, theologically, we kind of look at different things that says, why do we have to be so concerned about these details in the Old Testament? Well, God lets us know that the people who were living in the land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they are evil people that have built up so much sin and evil that God is going to judge them. And he's going to use Israel, his people, to judge them. God is going to use them as his tool to judge these people for their worshiping false idols, for all the atrocities they committed against their people and other people around there. Because God has chosen Israel to be a holy nation, he knows that if you have any of these idols, if you have any of these practices, evil practices, and the people to teach you, that you're going to fall away from God, who you cannot see. And you're going to begin to trust in these images and things that you can see. And you will use visuals and practices to take away from your trust and devotion in a God you cannot see and must listen to and follow. So we as people, we're visual people. Most of your instructions are visual, aren't they? Instead of just written. They've learned a long time ago that just written instructions don't always get everybody to follow it. That's why even Legos, they're for kids. Some of them are too young to read yet, so they're all visuals that show. We are visual learners. A lot of people prefer to watch a video instead of just listening to a podcast or reading in a book. In fact, for a lot of men, reading is very difficult for them to comprehend because they're so visual. And, you have people who learn by listening. You have people who learn by watching. You have people who learn by doing. And you have people who learn by reading. So these are different learning styles, and each of us have a preferred learning style. Now, we learn to adjust in our world to all of these, but we have a certain style. God knows that to trust him is a faith matter, and he cannot be seen. He can be represented, but he cannot be seen because he is so holy. And this is a factor in our faith, that things that are visual tend to pull us away from the unseen. God is unseen. God is quiet, and wants our devotion because he's the creator. And he offers us a relationship, but it's not like the pagan things of worship. There's something to see, and they have rituals that they do around this object, and it tends to take people away. And God says, I don't want you to have any of this in the land. In fact, you must destroy them all. Did you hear how he says it? He says, when you cross it, drive out all the inhabitants. You don't want anybody that's not an Israelite to live in the land when we first start. Now, you're going to see that God accepts all people, but it's on a relationship basis where they trust God. Here, you drive out all the habits. They don't know God. They don't trust God. Some will come to know God, just like Rahab, and we see Ruth, a Moabitess, that comes to know God. We see several others throughout the Old Testament that are not Israelites that come to know God, trust God. And but on the whole, these people know nothing about God, no practices of God. They already have their practices and rituals and their stuff, and God says, "Look, drive them out. Make them leave the country." And then all the things that they have there, it says, destroy their stone images, those idols, and cast images made out of metals and bronze, and demolish all their high places. People tend to get to the highest point to worship God, to worship a God, and they would set up altars and different things on each little hill, mountaintop around there. It's one of those inner things that we feel. The higher that we get, the closer to God we feel. I mean, those of us here in Mississippi, we live on what we call the flats. It's flat land. So when you go out to, New Mexico and Colorado and Utah and Wyoming, where they have mountains, there's a ooh when we are there, isn't it? It's I can't believe God created this, and it gives you this as you enjoy the sunrise, sunsets, the stars and the moons with, it's like everything is clearer and brighter there. At least for me. I've been there, and it is a special feeling and time as I guess because I talk to God and it's in a different place. But God says, look, this is when you get over there, this is what you have to do. You just have to do it. Follow what I am telling you to do. Now, for us today, why is it important to destroy the idols and high places devoted to these false gods? Why was that important? Well, people are curious, and so if you leave something, they kind of want to investigate it and find out what's going on. And if you've driven the people out and there's no information about what's left, then you're going to go find some of those people and bring them back and let them teach you, because we're learning creatures. We're always learning. So destroy it all. Destroy the idols. You don't need to know about those. There's only one true God. He's invisible. He's represented by the Ark of the Covenant that they carry, and that God lives in their midst. That symbolism. And you don't worship the Ark of the Covenant. You don't worship the Ark. You worship the God who dwells above it. That's right, above it. It is just a representation of God's presence with the Israelites. It is not God. And so it's easy to get confused, to try to understand this worship of a God who loves me and created me. And yet I cannot see him, touch him. There's no element that we're used to living in. Everybody else we see, our spouse, our children, our father and mother, our friends, we can touch them, talk to them. We can see them respond to us. We can hug them and kiss them to show affection. But with God, he loves us and cares for us and does these things. It's like behind the scenes all the time, even though he's very active in our lives. So God is trying to teach these Israelites. And he's talking to Moses about this and how you need to teach them. Moses was a great teacher, prophet, leader. And it's hard to communicate to people, isn't it? And to get them to understand. So it's important to destroy these in order to keep their focus on the one true living God, Yahweh. All right. There's going to be a task now. The description of what you do when you go to land. Now there's this task. Let's look at 54 through 56. It says you are to receive the land as an inheritance by lot, according to your clans. Increase the inheritance for a large clan and decrease it for a small one. Whatever place the lot indicates for someone will be his, and you will receive an inheritance according to your ancestral tribes. But if you don't drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, those you allow to remain will become barbs for your eyes and thorns for your sides. They will harass you in the land where you live, and what I had planned to do to them, I will do to you. Did any of those things jump out at you? Did you hear this one? You're to receive it as an inheritance. Now, my parents have gone on, and as my dad told me, which was very true, I don't have much to give you, but I'm going to teach you what I know. So he taught me how to work with my hands and fix washers, dryers, refrigerators, how to build buildings and fences, and a lot of common sense knowledge that he gave to me. He was he could work on a lot of things, as he said, but I'm master of none. I've just got a lot of knowledge, and I'm going to share that with you. I became his tool boy, his helper, for ever since I was old enough to carry tools, about 7, 8 years old, until I got a job in a factory at 15. So, yeah, that was my inheritance, is his knowledge that he gave me, because he did not have much to give. In fact, he passed, and then my mother, had a little bit. And when she passed, it was divided between my brother and sister and I. And it was very little, but it was all they had. And but it was an inheritance. An inheritance is more than money, land, or buildings that someone can give you. An inheritance is also all the knowledge and skills they taught you as part of your inheritance. So this inheritance that they're going to receive is land. And you say, well, where's my land going to be? Well, it tells you that they are fixing to do lots. And what it means is they roll the dice on different areas of the country, and God's going to help them come up by tribe. And these tribes, which, they're each named after the 12 sons, except for Joseph. Joseph is not counted as one of the 12 tribes. If you remember, his dad adopted his 2 sons. And because, for Joseph, he was dead to his father. Remember, his brothers lied and sold him into slavery and told his dad that a wild animal had eaten him, and all he had was that colorful royal outer coat. And I'm sure the dad, in his mind, he was dead. And so therefore, when he found out he was alive, and later on when he got down to Egypt, he adopted his 2 sons. And so Joseph is not a tribe, but instead he had a double portion because his 2 sons each got an inheritance. So he got a double portion. It's important to understand how all this tribe stuff works. Because you go, well, if you only have 12 kids, how do you get 13 divisions or tribal allotments? Because the Levites didn't receive a allotment in the promised land because they belonged to God. So they didn't get an allotment. Levites didn't. So that was the 13th tribe is God's tribe, dedicated to him as servants of the temple, the tabernacle, doing offerings, prayers on behalf of the people. So they're fixing to roll the dice. God's going to help place all these people where they're going to be placed in the different parts. And he says a larger tribe's going to get a larger share. It's got more people. It needs more land. A smaller one's going to get a smaller portion of land. But it's going to be fair. It's going to be by God's allotment as they divide up the land. And so he makes it very clear, this is what you're going to do. So one of the questions you need to get your people to listen to is, you might even want to ask this question even before you go, about what principle, before you get started on this section, what principles we want you to listen for some principles in this plan, in this task that they're fixing to have. What are some of the principles you can glean from these verses that can help you live a life of obedience to God? What are some principles that are given right here in it? Well, first principle, what do you think? Good time to pause, because people, that's such a deep question when you talk about principles. You may need to take a time to say, what do y'all think of some principles in this passage? And then take a drink. Did y'all think of a principle, maybe one, as we're talking about? Because there's several principles in this passage that we could translate for today that will help me. Give them time. Think about the question. A principle is more than just a simple yes, no answer. A principle is something we got to dig up a little bit. It takes a little time. So if you'll mention that before you start reading this, and I didn't do it that way, I'm trying to give you the hint as the teacher so you can do it even better. Since you'll have a class that respond, I have to answer all the questions I do anyway. So what are some principles? Well, you see, the first thing is that we need to be obedient to what God tells us to do. For them, you're going to take possession of the land. That we have to go in, and you're going to have to fight some people. Well, there's going to be some battles in your life too. Spiritual battles that you're going to face. Temptations. There are going to be some things that you're confronted to, just like I said, idols. And just, people say, I don't have any idols in my life. An idol is something that you focus on more than you do the one true God. Well, what could that be? Well, how many of you have, they call them smartphones now, not just a phone, but a smartphone, because they're connected to the internet. How many times do you find yourself doing this? Scrolling on your phone. Just to waste time. The devil loves to let you waste time, because the more time you waste, the less time you're thinking about God, petitioning God on behalf of other people, praying for others that have needs, listening to God because you're busy reading and focusing on other things. Could be the television. that you have on all the time, just for noise, right? You glance up at it every now and then, but the noise and the picture and things can also take you away from God. There are many things that can become our idol. What are the first things you do in the morning? You know, if that television is the very first thing that gets cut on in the morning, is that the first thing that needs our attention? Mm. So there's some principles here that you and I, those are all tools, and they're not evil in themselves. The TV's not evil, the phone's not evil, they're just tools. Tools of information is what you would say. So, yeah, information can become a god or an idol in our life. In order to take this land, we've got to drive out those people. We need to make sure that nothing takes our attention away from God. Don't let these things like sports teams or hunting, don't let our hobbies become our God. A hobby is fine. There's nothing wrong with a hobby. It's of interest. But what God really wants, even out of our hobbies, they are platforms of communication to tell people about God. Yeah. If you like football, great. You probably don't know this, but I like fantasy football. I like football. I like college football. I like pro football. I like it as an entertainment value. And so one of the things I do each fall for my own entertainment value, because I don't have very many hobbies, is I like fantasy football. And yeah, I like it. And people say, well, do you have a fantasy football team? I say, yeah. I have 16 fantasy football teams. Where do you find the time? Well, it's easy. I try to draft the same players or close to them so I can keep up with them. But yeah, I do it as a thing. Why? I can give 30 minutes to making my lineups on my teams. I enjoy watching fantasy football on TV. I enjoy reading about it. So I take small breaks on that. And I enjoy it. Now, come Sunday, on, of course, you got Thursday night and Sunday and Monday night. But I don't watch all those games. I don't hunger and thirst after those things. Instead, I enjoy reading my Bible. I enjoy teaching Sunday school. I enjoy Bible study classes. I teach a men's Bible study on Tuesday nights. I teach the kids with Regina. She and I tag team and take turns teaching the kids on Wednesday night. I do this podcast on Thursday mornings to have ready for Sunday. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I do. But studying the Bible is my biggest hobby. But it's also my most important thing because it keeps me centered on God. Other things are tools, but I use those tools, those other hobbies, in order to connect with other people that do not know God. We can talk some football, and then I can talk to them about what I like to do on Sunday more than football. So it's a good way to use it. Use your hobbies as tools. Don't let them become idols in your life. Don't let hunting deer or turkey take you away from thinking and studying about God. Let it be a part of your life, but not your life. It's the same way with money. It's the same way with any of your work that you do. Don't let it become your life. Let it be like your occupation, the tool that makes you money, but it is not everything. Yeah, you have to work at it. You have to do at least 40, If you own your own business, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, yeah. But you still find time to let God be God. You start your day with him, you end your day with him, and all during the day you're thinking about him and who God puts in front of you and how I can communicate to them this one true God. There you go. You got some principles here. Don't let idols, and then you're going to have to break them too if you really want to make your life the promised land that God has given you. So there's lots of principles here to do. We have an inheritance, a spiritual inheritance. Yep, we're adopted into the family. So we have a spiritual inheritance that's given to us. We have a home in heaven. This is not our own. But as I told you, part of our inheritance is not just money, land, and things. It is also knowledge. So I can really thank my mom and dad for teaching me about Jesus and God and Holy Spirit and taking me to church. And I have a wonderful life growing up because I came to know Christ at 7 years old. And I've known him my whole life. And I am so thankful for 60 years of knowing God. 60 years. And really, even before that, I knew God. I just didn't have that personal relationship because my mom and dad took me to church ever since they came home from the hospital. My mom took me straight to church that week because she loved God and she taught me how to love God. My dad to be faithful in church and serve God. So it's an inheritance that I receive from my parents and grandparents. So you too. There's another part of those principles that you need to share with your family. All right, last part, the plan. Look at chapter 34. We move over to 34 in verses 13 through 15. So Moses commanded the Israelites, "This is the land you are to receive by lot as an inheritance, which the Lord commanded to be given to the 9.5 tribes." And you said, whoa, 9.5. Wait, next verse. "For the tribe of Reuben's descendants and the tribe of Gad's descendants have received their inheritance according to their ancestral families, and half the tribe of Manasseh has received its inheritance. The 2.5 tribes have received their inheritance across the Jordan east of Jericho toward the sunrise." You see, before, when they got to the Jordan, 2.5 tribes said, we like this land on this side of the Jordan River. And Moses agreed after talking with God. Yes, they could have that, but they were going to have to send their fighting men with the other tribes, the other 9.5, to drive out the people in that land because they had already conquered Moab where they wanted to stay. They wanted to stay on that side of the Jordan River, the east side. Now they had to go in and help their brothers on the west side of the Jordan, which is the land of promise that was given to them as inheritance. And so he just reminds them, 2.5 of you already have received your inheritance. The other 9.5, you're getting yours by lot in the promised land as we drive these inhabitants out. So let me ask you this. How do God's promises serve as a motivator to remain faithful to him? How do God's promises serve as a motivator to remain faithful to him? Well, hopefully you've received an inheritance from your parents or grandparents, spiritual inheritance, examples of godliness and faithfulness. But if you didn't, you can start it right now so that you can build your faith and teach your kids and grandkids so it'll be part of their inheritance. Well, how does it serve as a motivator? God promises to be with us. It motivates me to be faithful because God has impacted my parents in such a way that I want to impact others the same way they did in my life. I try to do the same with my children and grandchildren. And I remain faithful to him. In fact, I keep praying, Lord, help me to remain faithful for the rest of my life. 60 years I've tried to be faithful up to here. Ever how many more years God gives me, he's given me 67 years already, but I've 60 years I've been a Christian. So I hope I can remain faithful to him the rest of my life. I hope I don't lose my mind and act up and make some terrible decisions. I want to remain faithful for the whole life. I want a spiritual inheritance to my kids and grandkids. So it motivates me. God's promises motivate me that God will bless my faithfulness to the third and fourth generations. I won't see them. I'll be past and gone. But my grandkids will be able to be teaching their grandkids about the faithfulness of their grandfather and how he loved God and loved them and loved people. And God worked through his life to touch many, many people. God's promises to us should be a motivator. Yes, they should. And you need to be able to explain that to other people. It's part of your testimony, your faithful things that God has given us instructions right here. Old Testament, New Testament, they're all instructions for us to live today. He gives us how he worked in the past, and he'll continue to work these principles he's given to us even into the future, that we must be careful not to have anything before God. No, that's the first commandment. Have no other gods before you, right? And you and I have to be careful because things creep into our life to begin taking attention away from God to these other things. And that's why God told the Israelites, run the people out and destroy all the high places, all the idols, everything. Let's keep us focused on God and his worship, the 10 Commandments, and his rules and his instructions as he guides us. I just pray we're more successful than the children of Israel were. Because he even said that if you don't drive them out, which we know for a fact they didn't drive all the people out, they did not destroy all the high places, that they became barbs in their eyes because they were tempted to follow their practices, and then became thorns in their sides. These are painful, y'all. If they didn't follow God's instructions, there would be pain for the people. And God says, I will do to you what you should have done to them. And we know that, the people, children of Israel, became unfaithful, and the invaders were the people they had driven out. They came back into their lives as their enemies. Yeah. We must be careful. Honor God. Use the principles he teaches us through God's word so that we can follow those instructions and pass our inheritance, our spiritual inheritance of knowledge and understanding and wisdom and guidance to point our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids to the Lord. Pass on that spiritual inheritance so that they can live in the land and be blessed. Well, thank you for tuning in this morning. May God bless you and enjoy your day of worship today.